Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Development Control Committee meeting. There is no fire drill planned for this evening, so what? I've got two. It's not. Is that better? Right. Okay. Sorry. All right. Welcome again then. There is no fire drill planned this evening, so if the bells go, please leave by that exit or those exits, whichever is the safest. Thank you. Right, for the benefit of members of the public watching or participating in this meeting, I would like to explain who everyone is. My name is Councillor Tony Durrant and I am the chair of this committee. To my right are the councillors who will be making decisions on the applications on this evening's agenda. To my immediate right are the officers who will be presenting the applications and providing advice to the committee. The Development Control Committee is a regulatory committee and not a political meeting. The committee will be considering the published papers and examining the evidence brought before us tonight and will make decisions based on planning reasons. We are guided by national and local planning policy and guidance. At the appropriate time, I will invite speakers to contribute to the meeting in order set out on the update paper. May I ask all speakers, including visiting members, to speak clearly and to keep points made on the application to material reasons only. No further dialogue between members of the committee and speakers will be permitted once the questioning is finished. All speakers will be reminded of their permitted speaking time and will be advised when there is 1 minute remaining. May I ask all committee members to avoid repetition and to keep any comments on each planning application to a maximum of 4 minutes. This evening we have 3 applications on the agenda and anticipate finishing by or hopefully a little bit before 9 o'clock. I do understand that planning can be emotive and I ask that everyone remains polite and professional throughout the meeting. Thank you. We will move to agenda item 1. Apologies for absence and substitution. We have no apologies and we are missing Councillor Howard Sorrell. Oh, and Andy McCormick is not here yet, sorry. Declarations of interest. Are there any from the council members? None, thank you. Any urgent matters to be raised? No, good. Okay, item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of May and the 11th of June. Minutes for the 28th of May will be signed this evening, and the minutes for the meeting on the 11th of June will be approved at the 9th of July committee. So if there are no comments, I will move from the chair that the minutes for the 28th are correct. Any comments on that? Do I need a seconder? Yeah, we've got to vote. Do I have a seconder for that? Angie? So all those in favour? Thank you very much. Right. We're now down to the meat of the meeting, applications for planning permission and public participation thereon. Right, we have agenda item 1. Bear with me 1 second. The officer will introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a full planning application for the installation of a ground-mounted solar voltaic array alongside associated infrastructure and landscaping and on-site biodiversity net gain. This is a site at land at Lower Wick Farm, Lower Wick, St Marybourne. The proposed site area encompasses 34.83 hectares of land and would be delivered across 3 agricultural fields. The applicant has stated the solar farm would deliver 29 megawatts of electricity, which is equivalent to an annual electrical needs of roughly 7,252 family homes. The application site is located within the North Wessex Downs National Landscape, with the site boundary running contiguous to this landscape designation. 200 metres to the west is a scheduled monument known as Devil's Ditch. Planning conditions are recommended to ensure that the operational period of the solar farm is up to 40 years, with development being removed from the site and the land restored to its former agricultural use. I'd like to draw your attention to section 10 of the report, which is the planning balance. This concludes that development would support the objectives of policy EM8 of the local plan and the relevant policies of the MPPF. And this is in relation to delivering renewable energy schemes to help tackle the climate change emergency. Substantial weight is afforded to this matter. In addition, significant weight in favour of the proposal has also been afforded to the biodiversity net gain. Weighing against the proposal is the harm identified to the national landscape, to which substantial weight has been attached. Less substantial harm to the scheduled monument has been identified and has been attributed great weight, and harm to the local landscape character of the area is afforded moderate weight. Whilst these matters weigh against the development, the scheme has been designed to mitigate the harm identified, limiting the conflict with the relevant landscape and heritage planning policies. Taking all these matters into consideration, it has been concluded that the positive contribution in supporting the decarbonisation of the UK's energy production through the delivery of a renewable energy source, in addition to biodiversity net gain, would amount to material considerations that outweigh the harm and has resulted in a recommendation for planning permission. I'd just like to draw your attention to the update paper. Firstly, just to confirm that a site viewing panel visited the site on Friday the 20th of June. Condition 20 has been updated to extend the HGV vehicle length to 16.5 metres. The quality of the agricultural land has also been updated in paragraph 8.65 and 8.66 as set out in the report. A habitat regulation assessment was also undertaken, and this concluded that there would be no likely significant effects on the integrity of the Solent designated sites. And also we received an additional public representation, but this raised no further material planning consideration. By way of a verbal update, condition 13 would also be updated to include a compliance requirement. So to conclude, this planning application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the committee report and the update papers. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a number of speakers on this application. We have two parish councils, and I would like to invite Councillor Patrick Foote from St Marybourne to come forward to the seats in front of you. When you're ready, the button on the right hand side, the microphone will go, no, back there, next one back, sorry. Yep. You will, when you press that button, you will have 4 minutes, and I will call when there is 1 minute to go. The right hand one. Thank you.
Good evening. I speak as chairman of the Parish Council for St Marybourne.
Sorry, can you, excuse me, can you speak to the microphone? It's quite noisy in here.
Indeed. I speak on behalf of the Parish Council of St Marybourne. This is something that sits on the very edge of our boundary and indeed of Basingstoke and Dean, right on the very edge where it abuts onto Tess Valley. I think that there are two major elements which have made us feel that this was a very unsuitable development for this place. Not only is it on agricultural land, and as we said, in what used to be an AONB, now a natural landscape, but also it's on the edge of very difficult roads, not only difficult during the time of construction, which would lead to enormous diversions. Over the last year, we've seen work done on behalf of Southern Water, which has caused great difficulty and destruction of local roads, one of which goes straight past this site. But also it is setting a very serious precedent for the future, one that would be difficult to unsay, we believe, can only lead to further development in areas which are predominantly rural, for development that would be very much better sited on an industrial seat, which is very close by. We are only about 1.5 miles from the edge of Andover, which is full of housing outside the remit of this authority, but full of building where solar activity would be very much better placed. Overall, we look upon it as a thin end of a wedge and something which would be very much better suited to an area of much lower landscape quality. I think it's driving a coach and horses through a policy which there isn't enough case to make. We're all for energy from alternative sources, but this, in our view, is absolutely the wrong place to put it. Thank you very much.
Please stay, because there'll be questions from members, possibly. Members, do you have questions? Nobody? Okay. Thank you. Still on. I would now call Sarah Wyatt Tilby of Hurstbourne Priors Parish Council. If you would like to take a seat when you're comfy, press the right hand button and your 4 minutes will begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. My name is Sarah Wyatt Tilby. I'm the Vice Chair of Hurstbourne Priors Parish Council. Can I begin by saying that it is acknowledged by the planning officer that this application amounts to a major development within the national landscape because of its location within the North Wessex Downs national landscape. As a consequence of that, the starting point is set out within paragraph 8.43 of the planning officer's report, which is at page 26, which I invite you to turn to, please. You will see from that paragraph that the starting point is that permission should be refused unless there's exceptional circumstances as to why it should be granted, and where it can be demonstrated that the development is in the public interest. You don't need me, councillors, to highlight to you that there is the word "and" within that sentence. You are therefore concerned with two different tests. One is whether there is an exceptional circumstance within the application, and two, whether or not the public interest justifies the application being granted. I can deal with the first of those very briefly and succinctly. On behalf of Hurstbourne Priors Parish Council, I would suggest to you that there is nothing about the circumstances of this application that come close to making it exceptional. And despite the wealth of material that's been given and placed before you, there's nothing that enables you to be properly satisfied that the presumption against major development within the national landscape should be rebutted. So far as the second point is concerned, when assessing whether or not the development is in the public interest, paragraph 8.43 sets out the sort of things that may be taken into account. And one of the matters that I ask you to focus upon, which is the third one within 8.43, is the detrimental impact upon the environment and landscape. And on that particular point, councillors, there are 3 points that need to be emphasised. The first is that it is acknowledged that there will be a detrimental effect on the landscape character of the national landscape. That's been highlighted by Mr. Benjamin this evening orally, and it's also set out within paragraph 8.52 of the report. Secondly, the report also highlights that the North Wessex Downs national landscape is particularly sensitive to industrial developments, and that's set out within paragraph 8.74. And again, I ask you to turn.
You have 1 minute left if you could start to conclude.
The third point in connection with that is that the development is acknowledged to be industrial in nature, and that is set out in paragraph 8.41. The impact of all those 3 points are summarised succinctly and helpfully within paragraph 8.89, and I urge all of you to read what is said within that particular paragraph. The officer's report suggests that the detrimental impact is offset by the following mitigating factors. The first, it's said to be temporary in nature. That temporary nature is 40 years.
Start to conclude now, please.
Thank you. Within the context of this application and given its location, 40 years seems to us to be permanent rather than temporary. There's landscaping mitigation, but again, if you read the report, particularly paragraph 10.10, that acknowledges that the planting will only progressively mitigate the impact, and no timeline is given in relation to that progression. And the third point is
your time is up, please.
Thank you. It's said to be localised. It seems to us that that's irrelevant. This is a designated national landscape. Whether it's localised or not is irrelevant.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from members? Any questions? No? Thank you very much for your contribution. In objection, we have Mrs. Liz Cosgrove. If you would like to take the seat, the microphone is on, so you don't need to press any buttons.
I don't have to do anything.
No, you just, once you start, you will have 4 minutes. I will call at 1 minute and then at 20 seconds to go.
Okay, I do suffer a bit with dyslexia, so if my husband needs to, he's going to come down and take over because I'm reading.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here on behalf of the residents of Mulberry Court in Andover who are opposing to the proposed solar farm just 80 metres from our homes. National guidelines recommend a 500-metre buffer between industrial solar sites and residential areas. This proposal falls far short and raises serious concerns. The developers acknowledge our concerns but continue to say there's no issue. It's become a pattern, appearing to listen then ignoring what we've said. We first raised concerns in August 23, and apparently a consultation followed last year, but none of us were asked, none of us were notified, none of us were involved. Before too long, there'll be over 100 homes right next door, and we deserve a voice. Now, I want to address the very real health concerns on our community about the unknown cancer risk of living so close. Section 3.1 of the response claims residents are upset due to misinformation on social media. This is deeply patronising. It dismisses us as alarmist when we have legitimate informed concern. We live in a retirement complex where my husband and many of our older and more vulnerable neighbours are cancer survivors. Personally, I've had 5 cancer occurrences. Sorry. I've lost a breast and I've
Right. Take
and
your
I've
time.
had almost 20 surgeries, chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And I'm on anti-cancer tablets for the rest of my life. We all moved to Mulberry Court hoping for a peaceful, well-earned retirement, and now after everything we hope this. We're not imagining the risks, we have lived through them. We take health matters seriously because we've had to. Just remember that the solar farms have only existed for just over 10 years in this country. That's not long enough to draw a firm conclusion about the long-term health effects from living next to one. And we shouldn't forget that it took over 20 years for science to realise that electromagnetic fields from pylons were linked to leukemia in young children. The studies being used to reassure us are based on research done overseas, in different climates with different regulations and very different living environments. Even the World Health Organization, which is often quoted to dismiss concerns, said, despite extensive research, there is no evidence that low-level electromagnetic field exposure harms human health. But, nevertheless, for those who may still have concerns, authorities recommend maintaining a distance of at least 2,000 metres. Other scientific sources we found even suggested 3,000 metres just in case. Yet here we are being asked to live just 80 metres from this development. That's roughly the distance from here to your car park. In section 20, they refer to changes made in the southeast corner of the site right next to our homes, but they didn't explain what those changes are. This lack of clarity adds to our concern. We cannot assess what we don't know anything about. Let us be very clear, we are not opposed to renewable energy. We understand the need for it, but it must be implemented responsibly with respect for the people who live nearby. We are not scaremongers, we are not misinformed. We are cancer survivors, retirees and long-standing members of this community. We simply want to feel safe in the homes sold to us as tranquil and peaceful retirement community. The guidance says 500 metres. This proposal gives us 80 metres. Please don't make us the exception. Please don't ignore the people who have been most affected. Thank you for listening. Sorry, I got emotional. I do
Thank you very much. No, appreciate that. Any questions? Sorry, excuse me.
Sorry.
Any questions, guys? No? Okay, thank you. If you could turn the right-hand button, if you could press that. That's it. Thank you very much. We have two speakers in support, Laura Fogarty and Claire Hillier-Brown. You have collectively 4 minutes. How you divide that up is up to you. You will be given a call at 1 minute to go.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for allowing BSR to speak in support of our application and share with you the significant benefits that our solar park proposal will bring to the local area.
Excuse me, sorry, could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, sorry.
We've got fans going and it's
Sure,
difficult to hear.
and to local people. BSR is a British company based in the southwest, and our mission is to create abundant and accessible renewable energy which has a positive impact upon people and the planet. In 2019, Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council declared a climate emergency, and it aims to work with partners, communities and businesses to achieve a net zero carbon borough by December 2030.
Excuse me, I'm very sorry, but
Oh, sorry, I'll try and speak up.
it's difficult to hear.
Sorry.
You could just lift your voice a little bit.
Would you like me to start again, or? No. Okay, thank you. I'm sure that committee members will recognise that the Lower Wick Solar Park will play an important part in supporting and achieving the Council's strategic and climate-related goals, alongside the UK Government's legal commitment to cut carbon emissions to net zero by 2050. Once connected to the grid, the solar park will power over 7,200 homes with clean, renewable energy. Our solar park will do more than just provide renewable electricity generation. Through implementing a comprehensive landscaping scheme, we will deliver biodiversity net gain, which will not only protect but also support and nurture the local ecosystems. This is an opportunity to boost biodiversity that would otherwise not be available in the absence of our project. Developers are now required by UK law to deliver a biodiversity net gain of 10%. BSR will deliver significantly more than this requirement. The Lower Wick Solar Park will deliver 217% biodiversity net gain, together with an excess of 11% net gain in hedgerow units. Early engagement was undertaken prior to submission with officers from the Council and Historic England. This concluded with the revision of the layout to provide greater separation distance between the solar arrays and the scheduled monument known as Devil's Ditch.
Sorry, if you're sharing the time, there's 2 minutes left.
Thank you. Within Pepper Hill Firs. Historic England and the Council's archaeological advisor have raised no objections to the application on heritage grounds. I would also like to address the landscape and visual comments we received. We acknowledge that the proposal is within the National Landscape Area. These areas do not prohibit the development of solar parks. The North Wessex Downs AONB position statement recognises the need for renewable energy projects to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. It states that increased development of renewable energy resources is vital for facilitating the delivery of the government's commitments on both climate change and renewable energy. It also states that the if schemes are above 1 hectare and are forthcoming based upon exceptional circumstances, then the North Wessex Downs AONB will use a criteria-based approach, considering firstly why such a major project needs to be located within the AONB. A proposal such as this is reliant on identifying availability on the national grid network. In this instance, capacity was identified at the local substation. The site search process found that the only commercially and technically viable sites were within the national landscape, with no suitably previously developed and non-agricultural land available. The other sites identified using this process were not deliverable due to environmental constraints and no willing landowners. Aside from being within the national landscape, the site taken forward has no other environmental constraints that cannot be addressed through mitigation.
You could start your conclusion, please.
Yeah. The point of connection is on site and is deliverable with the cooperation of the willing landowner. The application is accompanied by a landscape and visual assessment prepared by a qualified landscape architect. They prepared landscape and visual impact assessments for numerous solar schemes in accordance with the relevant guidelines, as is the case with our proposal. The extent of visual impact is a subjective matter, and we have made great steps in minimising this to a more acceptable level.
Your time is up. If you could get there now, soon, fairly.
We respectfully request that the committee approve this application as recommended in the officer's report to aid in the transition towards net zero. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could stay there and see if there's any questions from members. Councillor Miller, Councillor Gaskell.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. There's in the report and in some of the expressions we've heard from objectors, it's about the construction traffic that's due to be coming into this site to actually prepare it if it's approved. How long do you estimate the construction traffic would be involved in preparing the site from start to finish? Sorry, could you use your microphone, please?
Yeah, approximately 9 months.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Gaskell.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned connection to the grid. Could you explain where that connection is and how it's done? Is it overland? Is it underground cable? Is it into the pylon or is it into a substation?
It's on site and it'd be underground. It'd be connecting to a pole that's actually existing on site. Existing pole on site, sorry, yeah.
So it's a pylon that she's connecting to?
It's a pole, yeah, there'll be a pole on site that we will connect straight into.
Right.
So there's no off-site cable route or anything, it's all within the site boundary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? That's okay. Thank you very much. If you'd like to return to your seats, we will have questions to officers. Sorry. Sorry? Sorry, Councillor Cart, I do apologise. Well, welcome. If you'd like to take your seat, press a button and you have 4 minutes. And apologies once again.
This is a finely balanced recommendation. There are strong policy-based and material issues that give you a firm grounding to refuse this scheme. Paragraph 8.111 sets out the various elements of national, neighbourhood plan, local and North Wessex Downs policy that this scheme is in conflict with. Your officer suggests that these harms are outweighed by the benefits, but I'm afraid that isn't backed up by the evidence. When it comes to landscape, our own landscape officer is clear the scale and the industrial nature of this scheme would cause significant harm. That's not less than substantial harm, that is significant harm, and that is an important difference. The case officer's view does not represent the borough's professional assessment. This site is located within our AONB, our national landscape, and this matters in local, national and regional policy. The case officer posits that because this scheme is on the edge of the national landscape, that matters less, that it should minimise its legal value. That is incorrect. In law, the designation is the designation. It's not a question of shades of grey. Local and national policy is clear about the barriers to large-scale, and I emphasise large-scale renewable development in nationally protected national landscapes. EM1 directs that you take account of the management plan of North Wessex Downs, and it says that national policy in considering these should take account of the designation. Now, the national landscape accepts that small-scale schemes may be acceptable with mitigation, but legally this is not a small-scale scheme. There is a really important difference. This is 35 hectares on visible and high ground. And policy EM8 of our local plan suggests that we accept renewable commercial projects unless there are adverse impacts. But we've heard that the landscape impact has been identified by Natural England, by the National Landscape, and indeed by our own landscape officer. The profound impact on landscape in terms of scale and size and industrial character mean that it would harm the purposes of our national landscape. The case officer seeks to diminish this position by reference to net zero and climate obligations. But I'm asking the committee to uphold our own professional borough assessment of landscape. Now, the NPPF, which has been referred to, points to the importance of refusal except in exceptional circumstances. But I ask this committee, what are the exceptional circumstances? Can we point to them in the report? I've read it. I can't find them.
You
I
have
don't
1
see
minute.
them. The case officer misconstrues government targets on net zero and climate as sufficient to be those exceptional circumstances, but those circumstances exist everywhere in the country. And he admits in the report that they are not planning policy arguments. There is nothing in our national policy targets on net zero that enables you to permit this scheme. If it was outside of the national landscape, if it was just one field along, the weight of the argument would be very different. The energy generated from homes, you could talk about that as exceptional, potentially. You could talk about that as a benefit, potentially. But it is so
20 seconds,
minimal
please.
by comparison to the national landscape. The barriers preventing approval of this scheme from the national landscape are so high, and the exceptional circumstances and the benefits suggesting you should approve it are so low. I support delivery of renewables, but not in our national landscapes. That's our borough's policy, that's our national policy, that's our North Wessex Downs policy. I ask you to support our own position.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Councillor Carr? No? Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much. We can now move to questions to officers. Councillor Miller, Councillor Jones. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we heard one of the objectors mention this distance of her property was 80 metres away and a recommendation that it should be 500 metres away. Could the officers comment on that, please?
Thank you for your question. I'm not aware of any planning policy regulation that stipulates set distances. So from a planning position, I couldn't give you any more clarity on that other than I'm not aware. I would highlight that our environmental health team were consulted on the application and they have raised no objection to the scheme. Thank you.
A supplementary, yes.
Well, supplementary, it's a follow-up. The other thing that was mentioned, that there's a perspective of 100 houses being built in the vicinity of this in the future. Is there any knowledge of this?
I think the site is located in the Test Valley Borough District. Is it? Oh, okay. I'm not aware. I think the site may not have been completed. I think that was the reference to the mobile home park.
Sorry, this is just for members, please.
I didn't hear the last response.
Oh, okay. One point though, this, I am informed, should have been a question to the speakers, but if, Luke, if you would repeat the last bit for the...
I can't guarantee, I'm not overly certain in terms of the reference, but it may be linked to the more mobile homes going on the site as Mulberry Court.
Apparently I can go back to the speaker and ask them a question regarding which homes we're referring to, if that would help clarification. Can't hear me either with that. We need to know the site, where it is.
Okay, so we're, the railway comes through, we're here, and the proposed development is right on the other side of the railway line, right opposite. There will be 120 homes when it's finished. There are currently 60 of us at the moment. It's billed as a retirement complex, and most of us are of retirement age.
Okay, thank you. Does that clarify?
Well, ish. I'm not sure whether reference, is that the railway line that's going across the bottom of the site?
Yeah, you can see like under the yellow, there's like a line there.
So it's
Yeah, up a bit, that's
okay.
right. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
there.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
If you'd like to take your seat again, thank you. Councillor Jones, your question, please.
Yes, it's really conditions 3, 4 and 5, I think probably really 4 and 5, on decommissioning. It isn't absolutely clear to me who would be responsible for this. I guess in condition 4, it suggests that there will be no generation for a year, which suggests maybe no one will be operating that. Has any provision been made for the funding of decommissioning, and who is actually responsible?
So the planning permission runs with the land, so it will be the owner of the land or that site will decommission it. So the expectation would be the owner. It wouldn't fall on us to remove it. So that condition basically relates to if no energy is produced for 12 months, i.e. a year, we would expect the items to be removed from the site.
So basically the landowner would be responsible for the expense, the cost of decommissioning?
Yeah, I think the point being raised is that presumably your query is if in the scenario of enforcement action being required because it wasn't decommissioned at the right time, then ultimately the planning permission goes with the landowner, goes to the land, sorry, so it ultimately be the landowner. It may of course be the situation where the applicant in their contractual position has a requirement to do that, but the point is from an LPA, local planning authority point of view, there is an ability to enforce against the landowner because the planning permission goes with the land itself.
Thank you. Councillor Gaskell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the report's littered with objections against landscape, natural beauty, and I'd just like to refer to 7.3. There's an objection from North Wessex Downs area of outstanding natural beauty, and it says it would fail to conserve. Now, I repeat that. It would fail to conserve and enhance the landscape and scenic beauty of the North Wessex Downs area. Is that a threat to say the area of outstanding natural beauty would be taken away if this site was put in place, or is that just saying it's going to affect the beauty?
Yes, it is an impact on the landscape. It's not a threat to the designation at all. It's the policy talks about enhancing and conserving, so it's reference to the planning assessment element.
Any more questions? No, we will move to debate.
Thank you, Chair. I have the dubious pleasure of representing this council at the North Wessex Downs office for about 6 years. And yes, I remember that management plan. But also I remember the changes in the MPPF that came along, not the recent ones in December last year or November last year, but the one that preceded that. And it changed the approach of planning with the national landscapes, A and Bs as they were then, national landscapes as they are now. And what they did was, in fact, extend the physical boundaries of all those areas within the country and to include the setting of, because yes, they were very clear in what they talked about, and we've heard that tonight from a couple of the speakers, but they wanted to protect these national landscapes even more. And to have this put inside the national landscape, I think is a step too far. And if we consider the progress of the MPPF, and I think some observations were made this evening by one of the speakers, that there's nothing specific in terms of what the advantages might be, in terms of policies at government level or anything else. This is a step too far in my mind. And the setting is one thing, and we've had these discussions within this committee over the years about prospective developments in the setting of the national landscapes, and some of them have been hard to overcome. But I really think that with the observations of our own landscape officer in this particular report and the policies, national landscape policies and the MPPF, I cannot support this on that basis. I've seen the arguments within the report about there was a study done of all possible alternative sites, and for various reasons they weren't available. But I still say this is classed as a major industrial impact within the national landscape. National landscapes are there for a reason. They are valuable. They're valuable to this country. And I can't, for one, support this application on that basis.
Thank you. Councillor Bound. Oh, you okay? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to compliment the officer on the what I thought was a well-balanced report in terms of laying out the pros and the cons of the case. And we've heard from the objectors lots of the cons mentioned. As far as I'm concerned, they amount to landscape harm, heritage harm, hasn't come up really, and loss of good farming land, which also I don't think was mentioned. The pros, as far as I'm concerned, are, well, the main pro is the benefit to us in terms of green energy. And although that was somewhat pushed to one side, I thought, by the objectors, I think that comes out as being the main point within the report that sways the balance, because the officer quite clearly has summarised the downside of developing this particular site. But I believe from what he has said and what the report says, he's come down of the view that the green energy element of it trumps the effect on the landscape. And I think we have to remember that the landscape will not be, or doesn't have to be affected forever. Landscape goes on and on and on, and this is a temporary site. Albeit it's a long temporary site, but it's still a temporary site. Those panels can be moved quite quickly, I would imagine, from that site, and it's back to what it was. There are no permanent fixtures there. So, as far as I'm concerned, the officer recommendation swings it for me.
Okay, I'm going to allow the others to speak.
There's a wealth of material in here about heritage impact on the national landscape, location, the development, use of agricultural land, and loss of it. And then when we get to section 10 of the report, we have to try and assign weights to these various considerations. On the other side of the scale, on the planning balance, is the fact that this scheme, if approved, will provide green energy for 7,250 homes, which is getting on for 2 wards in the borough. We all know the challenges that we have with climate. We all know the challenges that we have with expensive electricity, not least because a lot of it's generated from gas. Mention was made by Councillor Carr that he disagreed with the officer's assessment in the report. I'm inclined to say the officer's right, and although I would have regrets at this application being passed, I don't think that the degree of harm would be enough to weigh the scales in the direction of refusal. I think there's significant weight that we need to add to the benefits of this scheme, and on balance I'll be supporting the scheme.
With your indulgence, Chair, I'd like to come back again later in the debate, but at this point I just wanted to raise a couple of points. Construction traffic. The report very clearly states that Hampshire County Council, having referred to some conditions, have withdrawn their objections. They have no objections to the construction. We've heard from a resident who lives in Mulberry Homes about the impact On the site visit, we went into, it wasn't planned, but we went into the Mulberry Homes area. And as soon as we entered, we could see rows and rows of prefabricated, mainly grey, the modern colour, bungalows. And from each bungalow, all you could see was the bungalow in front. You couldn't see anything of the site whatsoever. As we drove through the site, there was a big clearing where there was plots laid out but nothing built. And then further down the slope, there were some more bungalows. What was clear is that the railway line and all the vegetation along it really obscures the vast majority of the site. And the undulating nature of the land means that some of them are below the visibility of the bungalows. Even if the railway line wasn't there, they wouldn't be able to see them. All around the site, it is well screened. So I understand the objections from some of the residents at Mulberry Homes, but for the vast majority, they will not see anything of the site. For those who can, a lot of them will be looking straight out, will be looking alongside the bottom bank of solar panels, which is, I forget the distance now, it's a couple of 100 metres or more. It's a long way. So, yes, there will be some damage to the landscape, but temporary. As regards residents viewing the site, they would need to walk around the site perimeter with a step ladder. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gaskell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to point out that obviously there's issues around the area state of outstanding natural beauty that's been discussed. We have received applications previously which are for 49 or around 50 megawatts. So this is only 60% of what could possibly be from a solar farm. And I question whether this is the right area for it. It is an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's only 60% of what we've seen before in previous applications. And I just wanted to highlight that there are probably better locations for this site.
Thank you. Councillor Hussey, did you want to come back?
Yes, we're not here to speculate on other sites. We're discussing this application, and there may not be any other sites that come before this committee. We're not here to discuss that. It's this particular application. The site, the application approved is for a 40-year period. The construction is a no-dig construction, which means that there's protection for the land in terms of tree roots, whatever. And for me, the balance is quite heavily weighted. Having been on the site visit and looked at different viewpoints, and you were there, this isn't tilted balance. I think it's very strongly in favour of approving this application. The benefits far outweigh the negatives, and some of the negatives are temporary.
The motion is lost. We need a confirmation of why.
No.
Sorry.
You need.
Yes. Does anybody else have an alternative proposal? Doesn't look like it. Councillor Miller.
I'll give it a go, Chair. Thank you very much. I think I'll start off on the point that I was making, on the one on landscape. And there's enough.
Sorry, Councillor Miller, is this a proposal for refusal?
Sorry, if you want the proposal refusal of this application on the grounds of it's against the policies of the North West National Landscape. It's we have objections from our own landscape officer. I'm willing to take advice from the planning department on this, but that was my main principle in objecting to this. The balance, the weight that was given at the end here, I think that, as far as I'm concerned, that the weight is against the, there's insufficient weight given to the benefits, I think is the way I would put it, on the generation here. And I've got to be careful in my wording. It was interesting to see the number. I don't know how exact that benefits of so many houses. It's a very ephemeral number as far as I'm concerned. I would have believed it more if it said 7,000 houses. But when it comes down to individual digits, I'm sorry, I can't believe it. It's the whole subject of this energy generation. But that's another thing. I'm trying to struggle a little bit with the wording that would be acceptable to the officers. Landscape would be sufficient.
Right. Come back for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Miller. I took note when you were speaking earlier of the points that you referenced, and I just want to sense check whether this is what you mean by impact on national landscape, because that's clearly the key part of your motion for refusal.
Yes.
And within that, in terms of the policy context, you've also mentioned the National Landscape Management Plan as a material consideration. In terms of planning policies, it would be policy EM1 of the local plan.
Yes, EM1.
And that the adverse impacts identified in policy EM8, that it fails those two key policies. The other part, I think, from your discussion earlier, in the fact that you said around the balance doesn't go in favour because it outweighs the other way.
Yep.
It's a question, are you saying it doesn't pass the exception test, therefore, of the MPPF?
Exactly.
Paragraph 190.
190 is the
There's not an exceptional reason that outweighs when you take into account.
That's right.
So
yes.
Okay.
Do you want to contribute?
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Court?
The other objection, that's what I intend to do. The other objection would be on the basis of CN9, I think, isn't it, for transport?
Councillor, I would strongly advise against including that in a recommendation for refusal for the points raised earlier. There's been a transport impact assessment done. It's been subject to consultation with the local highway authority. There's conditions that can mitigate the impact. So with those in place, we wouldn't therefore, in the recommendation, form a reason for refusal. So I suggest it would be on the first reason. If I could just mention one additional point in that first reason, it would also be relevant in terms of the neighbourhood plan policies in terms of landscape impact as well.
Thank you for your advice on that.
You're still seconding the motion, yes? Okay. Refusal. Okay. All those in favour of the no, where are we starting?
We're going to retake the vote because the mic wasn't on. So when the chair asks all those in favour of refusal, can you raise your hands high, please? And then he'll ask those against, and can you raise your hands if you're against?
Okay. All those in favour, please. Against? 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So that application is refused in relation to the impact on the national landscape, it being contrary to policies EM1 and EM8 of the local plan and relevant late landscape policies and neighbourhood plan, contrary to policy paragraph 190 of the NPPF, and that there are no exceptional circumstances outweighing the benefits of the scheme.
We can move now to item 2. If the officer would introduce that, please. We'll allow a change over time. We're all set for item 2. If the officer would like to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chairman. So the second item before you this evening is for a site at Ramsdale Road, Pamber End, Hadley. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 4 dwellings. This site has been before us previously, where this is a revised scheme following the grant of planning permission for 2 units, where those 2 units fronted the highway. We're now looking at 4 units which are extending deep into the site, as illustrated on page 138 of your agenda. If I draw members' attention to the update paper, this contains responses to questions that were raised by a ward member on matters of tree belts, hedgerow distances, and also in relation to the positioning of the properties, both in this application and adjacent planning permissions from the edge of the highway. The application before you this evening is recommended for refusal, as set out in your agenda, addressing the scale, layout and impact on the character and appearance of the area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have 1 speaker. If Mr. Cottrell would like to come forward. Got it right this time. I wrote it down in capitals.
So, good evening, Chair and members. Thanks for your time on Friday at the viewing panel. I hope you all found it very useful to gain an understanding of the existing built form, the boundary vegetation and the extent approvals that surround this site. As you will have seen, there are existing dwellings to the east which face onto the A340. There are also the dwellings that were built recently to a very high standard, according to the officer, which is also considered as backland development. To the north, there are 2 dwellings that I designed and built out a few years ago. And the adjoining land to the north also has extent approval for the 2 dwellings. The boundary to the west is a high roadside hedge, and as some of you saw on Friday as you walked along the road, this hedge does a very good job at screening the existing dwellings just up the road, which have a ridge height of 6.5 metres. The south boundary is the tree and hedge line, which, as the officer has stated in the report, it will provide screening for the listed building that's located much further along Ramsdale Road. Therefore, given the built form to the north and the east and the existing vegetation that the officer's words say will provide screening, I do not see how it is possible to then conclude that this proposal will cause a detrimental harm to the local landscape character. Further to this, I asked members to try and have a look at the landscape officer's comments for the site to the north from November 2022. The landscape officer for that site states that due to the abundance of development, both agreed and proposed in this area of Pamber End, it has changed the character to one that is more urban, and with development encroaching into the rural landscape, I would have to raise no objection. Yet, they claim our site is rural and have objected. Ultimately, what this comes down to is the level of harm for 4 dwellings greater than the 2 dwellings that we can build out? And are the benefits of 4 dwellings greater than 2 dwellings? And do these benefits outweigh the identified harm given the current position regarding housing land supply? I feel that the benefits for 4 dwellings
dwellings does outweigh the identified harm, and therefore tilted balance should be applied. So I'm therefore asking you to please approve this application accordingly. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Any questions from members? No? Questions to the officers? Any questions? Councillor Jones.
I think with the benefit of this plan in front of us, do we have any protection for the trees from the update report? The answer is not. Is that right?
So there isn't any objection in relation to the relationship of these particular properties to the trees. In fact, the distances of those properties proposed now is actually further from that southern boundary to the extant permission, albeit there are 4 more dwellings rather than just the 2 previously approved.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up for that at all? No? All questions done? We will move to debate. Councillor McCormick.
I've looked at this application and in particular the maps. I normally go for the maps first with applications. When you look on pages 137 and 138, I'm really struggling to see why we should refuse this. In fact, I would go further and move approval on the basis that I think the proposed development does comply to policies EM1 and EM10, which I've got in front of me at the moment.
Just my 10 cents worth. I think that with this one, it's a case of how much is too much before it becomes urban creep and we lose all the countryside. So I've been struggling with this one. It is quite a difficult one to determine. 2 houses that are in line with the rest of the houses along there, I don't see as a problem. But when you're coming off and you've got 4 houses which are the opposite way, I'm not entirely sure whether that is too much, if you see what I mean.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to... Oh, sorry. Councillor Hussey. Are you seconding or do you have something to say?
No, I want to join the discussion.
Say again, sorry.
I want to join in the discussion.
Okay, please do.
If we look at the update paper, some measurements are being provided by the officers. And what these clearly show is that there's a building line running from Robin's Rest through the vacant site, which has planning permission but nothing yet constructed, and to the original application for this application site. They're all 30 to 32 metres set back from the highway. The revised application moves the building line forward 4 metres. For me, that is a small issue, but something that worth noting. And in discussion, I'm asking questions of officers. I do not compare this to Robin's Rest, which has an access road to 2 properties facing the country lane. This is more of a cul-de-sac creating a new road off Robin's Lane with 4 properties at right angles to the road. And therefore, it is quite different from the previous application, which was given planning permission. It's 4 metres nearer, and it's a new road rather than just an access to 2 properties. So, on balance, I think that the officer's conclusion about out of character, the scale, I would support that. So I would move refusal.
Can't take a motion at the moment. At the moment, we've got a proposal for approval on the table. So if there's a seconder to that, that needs to be taken first, and then we can take your proposal after that.
Yeah.
Is there a seconder?
Is there a seconder
For McCormick's motion
for
to approve?
Councillor McCormick's motion to approve?
And that falls.
And that has fallen. So we, which is to approve the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Angie. We have a seconder. All those in favour?
And against?
And against? 2. That's everybody, isn't it?
Abstentions. Did anybody abstain?
No abstentions, were there? No. Okay. The recommendation is carried. Do you wish to?
Thank you, Chairman. So that recommendation was carried for refusal of the application as per the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, we will move to item 3, if the officer would like to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. This application is a full application for a new dwelling within the countryside. The proposal is for a new dwelling with a detached garage.
Yeah, I'm switching that on.
Sorry. So this application...
Can we give you a minute just to...
Thank you.
You can start again if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you very much. So the application is for a planning application for a single dwelling with a detached garage and bin and bicycle store. The site is located within the countryside. The application has been called in to be determined by the committee by Councillor Chris Tomlin, given the officer recommendation for refusal. There are 2 reasons for refusal, which are listed in the main agenda paper on page 142. The site plans and or other supporting plans are also within the main agenda paper on pages 171 to 173. I would like to draw your attention to the update paper, which talks up, as mentioned, that there was a site viewing on Friday, the 20th. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a number of speakers in support. We have Mr. Stacey, Caroline Downey and Ian Lassiter. Sorry? Oh, yeah. Okay, you will have collectively 4 minutes from when the first person presses the red button on the right-hand side, or the button on the right-hand side.
Chairman, members, thank you for your time this evening and for attending the site visit on Friday. Firstly, and of note, there are no consultee or public objections to the scheme. The application accords with local plan policy SS6A, with the exception that officers believe the site to be isolated. The adjacent site, which you saw on Friday, is near completion. Approval under delegated powers in 22, the officer's report stated, the application is not considered to be isolated and would contribute to the enhancement and maintenance of a rural community. And she goes on to state that it would represent sustainable development. I therefore would like to ask, how can this application be suddenly deemed to be isolated and unsustainable, and the other not? It's okay, I can answer that. Due to the revision of the MPPF, each application being considered on its own merits, but why? When the whole thrust of the revised MPPF is to increase the number of houses being built. The borough has a shortfall of 2.9 years, and yet officers are consistently resisting rural housing purely because of the amendment to paragraph 11 and to regard to directing development to what they deem to be sustainable locations. Let me bring to your attention to a very recent and highly relevant appeal decision issued just last week. This involved a site on Ash Lane, only 700 metres from the application site. The appeal was dismissed, but not on the grounds of sustainability. In fact, the inspector explicitly rejected the argument that the site was in an unsustainable location. She stated, and I quote, "The Council suggests that the national policy direction in terms of siting of sustainable development has strengthened since that permission was granted. Whilst the framework has been revised and changes introduced since the 2022 application was considered, I am not persuaded that it has materially changed in the context of the proposal before me and in relation of the location of proposed development seeking sustainable transport options." She goes on to state that she does not consider the development to be isolated. She continues, as recognised at
If you're
paragraph
sharing the time, you've just under 2 minutes.
110 of the framework, the opportunities to maximise sustainable transport solutions will vary between urban and rural areas, and this should be taken into account in decision-making. Although limited in scope, the development could be required through imposition of conditions to provide opportunities to promote sustainable transport opportunities, including cycle storage and EV points, which would accord with policy CN9 of the local plan. She concludes to say, therefore, I do not consider that there is a justification to withhold planning permission in respect to the principle of residential development of this land and in terms of its location. I quote this in full because her findings are directly applicable to this application. The inspector confirms that rural sites can still be considered sustainable, especially when reasonable measures are conditioned. The revised MPPF seeks to achieve more housing, not less. Paragraph 73 specifically supports small sites that can be delivered more quickly by virtue that the site next door of the application accords with local plan SS6. Why then are officers even considering paragraph 11D of the PPF when it already accords with the existing local plan, which should be first consideration when assessing the proposal? I urge you, councillors, to overturn the officer's recommendation and approve the application on the grounds that it complies with the local plan policy SS6A and to condition the provision of cycle storage and EV charging.
My wife and I come to you as a family with ties to the community, seeking support for a modest home that will enable us to support our parents who have nearly finished the house that you saw on Friday.
You should start your conclusion, I'm afraid.
Our proposed home, within a ribbon of houses, will be next door to my parents. Intergenerational living is supported in paragraph 83 of the MPPF. Our application received no technical objections and 7 letters of support from the local community. Members, we respectfully ask for you to see the sustainability for the value of a young family building a house between existing properties to care for parents and contribute to local life. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions from members? No? Thank you very much. If you'd like to return to your seats. I'd like to invite Councillor Tomlin as visiting ward councillor. You know the rules, you know the seats. you have 4 minutes. I'll give you a shout at 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this application before you tonight is because I called it to you, and I want you to consider the sole reason for refusal, which is sustainability, as per the officer's report, as you can read. So from the site viewing and the visualiser that you've seen, for those members unable to attend the viewing panel, this application is for a house in a vacant site along a lane in Silchester and would form part of the linear built form fronting the road and on a brownfield site, which is noted in the report. And I also note that the new, and I think members saw, the new build house immediately next door was granted permission, as we've heard, in 2022, not being considered as isolated or any issue with sustainability. In addition, the refusal reasons are not considering this site to be isolated in the built form. We should also note that Silchester Parish Council offer no objections to this application either. So this house appears to fall into a recent vague change in the MPPF, which uses the words that homes should, not must, but should, be sustainable, and the officer is considering that it is not sustainable due to its location where there is no public transport available and its distance being too far from any that might be available in the adjoining rural villages. This whole area is poorly serviced by bus services anyway. Virtually all of rural Basingstoke and Dean could be defined in this way, including many sites we put in our local plan. I've had a read of the new MPPF, and paragraph 110 states the planning system should actively manage patterns of growth in support of these objectives. Significant development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable through limiting the need to travel and offering a genuine choice of transport modes. This can help to reduce congestion and emissions and improve air quality and public health. But the important part, I believe, however, opportunities to maximise sustainable transport solutions will vary between urban and rural areas, and this should be taken into account in both plan making and decision making. So in this case, the property proposed will be sustainable with regards to being net zero ready with non-reliance on fossil fuels, incorporating modern insulation, heat pumps, solar photovoltaics, storage batteries and electric car charging. So surely this alone meets the MPPF guidance and aspiration for sustainable living and reducing carbon emissions. It's certainly welcome to provide homes like this that help with this borough's carbon emissions. So I therefore hope members will see that on this single rejection point, that in this case the officer's opinion could be challenged, as I argue the benefits of this property far outweigh the harm. So I ask you to consider approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Councillor Tomlin? No? Thank you. I'd like to reclaim your seat. Right, we have questions for officers.
Thank you, Chair. Section 7.2, statutory consultees. Comment from HCC Highways, the final comment was advice not being fully followed. Can you clarify, please?
Thank you. The initial advice was to reduce the, it was proposed that the visibility space be 20 by 40, 20. Yeah, 20, yes, yeah, 20, sorry. It's 20. Oh, 2, yeah. So 2 meters by 43 meters. The initial proposal was 2.3 by 43, but the advice was that it should be 2 meters and not 2.3 meters. But when the submission was received, it was still 2.3 meters. That's why they said it hasn't been followed through, but it is still acceptable.
Yes, please.
I'm just trying to clarify where the point of egress is, because it would appear from what we saw on site, it is the other side of a fence, right adjacent to an existing property. Is that correct?
If I can draw members' attention to the slide in front of you on the visualiser, or page 171 on your agenda, there you will see marked with a hatched line along the edge of the road the visibility displays that we were referring to. You also have the access there, so the access and egress onto the highway. So the consideration from Hampshire was originally the advice on the precise measurements of the setback from the highway weren't quite followed, but actually it's not giving rise to adverse harm to highway safety. So it was deemed to be acceptable.
Thank you.
If I could just ask in terms of, I actually looked at this on site, and I have to say if I was driving a car, I might have some troubles being able to access and egress this site, but maybe it's just my driving standards, my age.
Councillor Gaskell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask officers, because of their expert opinion, that we heard an argument from the applicant's representative from a recent appeal case. Was there anything in that appeal case that you would consider and would change your report in any way?
afraid we don't actually have the full details of that appeal case before us. Obviously, we do have to consider each application on its own merits. And as set out in the report, for example, on page 156, there are other examples of other appeals that we have equally received where there has been the analysis of what is a sustainable location or not. So yes, we do have a differing appeal in that situation, which we do have to take account of. But again, equally, we have others saying the contrary.
Okay. Any more? Okay. Thank you. We will move to debate. Councillor Bound.
Yes, I'm fully in agreement with the recommendation as on the order paper this evening. I do believe that the site is isolated. I don't think you could really disagree with that summation as the report comes up with, and I don't think it is sustainable. It might be sustainable in terms of the actual building, and I concur with what Councillor Tomlin says in that respect, but I don't think you can be expecting anybody to be using anything other than a car or a motorbike, whatever you prefer, to move from that particular location to anywhere else within the borough, or even to Silchester or through to Bramley. I don't think people are going to walk on those roads. I don't think people are going to cycle on those roads. They might do as holiday makers, but not on a regular basis with a family that would actually live there. So it would introduce a means of transport, which is the car, albeit it could be an electric car, which would make it that much more sustainable. But for me, it is not a sustainable location. It is isolated, and I would move the recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments? Councillor Miller.
Yes, for comments, Chair. Thank you. Okay, I didn't visit the site. I wasn't available for the viewing panel. But this business about sustainable location, when you've got other houses around there, other properties that are being built under a sustainable label, I think it, to me, from a common sense point of view, excuse me deviating from planning policy, is a nonsense, because you've got houses in a collection there, one's in a sustainable location, one isn't. We're not talking the same kind of language here. Yes, the house can be sustainable, but if there's slight change in wording in the MPPF, we're going to be chasing our tails. And let's face it, let's be practical. Do you expect people out in this particular area or any similar area in our very large rural area of this borough to be supplied with the right kind of sustainable transport, or be in the position of a family going out on their bikes to Tesco's to get their weekly shop? I'm sorry, it's dream. You're dreaming about it. I consider those kind of arguments don't stand up in my case. Most of us live both in rural and in urban environments, and we apply a little bit of logic to this. And because of the rest of the properties and the households that are living in that area, this is a sustainable location, because they are. Does it make them all unsustainable all of a sudden, using this kind of argument? I'm sorry, I can't wear it.
Thank you. The officers wish to come back on that.
So if I can just draw reference to the discussion that has been happening about the neighbouring property, just to highlight that actually had a slightly different starting point. That had an extant permission for a residential unit on the site in the form of a mobile home. So the dwelling that is there now was actually granted permission as a replacement dwelling. So when we are referring back to policy SS6, our starting point is on a different criteria, which doesn't make reference to needing to be in a sustainable location or not to be in an isolated location. So we have a slightly different starting point to that site compared to the one that we have next door before us this evening. We also have the change to the MPPF, which has been referred to by speakers and members. and that change came in at the end of 2024. So we can't actually apply retrospectively that assessment on that location. What we are looking at is what we have before us now in that policy context and how we move forward from that, in which the MPPF is very clear about sustainable locations and sustainable development being that starting point. And there is an emphasis within the MPPF, particularly within the transport chapter itself, is how we are looking at sustainable options. So I hope that just assists clarifying, in particular with relation to the site next door and that change to the MPPF.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, I think it is difficult to say whether these places are sustainable. If I take my own village, 20 years ago it was served, I think, by 6 or more buses a day, and I guess would be clarified as sustainable. Now it has 3 a week, and basically it would make any new development in the village unsustainable, and that's true of a large part of rural Hampshire where the country bus services have disappeared.
Yeah.
And so I think it makes it either we will have to change our opinion on almost all other applications that come before us, or we have to consider that this is no less sustainable than most Hampshire rural housing.
Thank you. Councillor Hussey.
With your indulgence, I've got a question for officers. What I don't understand is, with the date of the new policy, December 24, when the application was registered in March 24, why isn't the date of the registration applicable to which policies, versions of policies we should apply?
We are required to determine the application in accordance with the planning policy position as it stands at the point of determination, rather than the point of registration of the application.
I believe we had a motion on the table from Councillor... Sorry, we had a proposal from Councillor Bound. Do we have a seconder for that proposal? We do not. Sorry? Okay. Well, in that case, I will move to refuse the recommendation. Of the application, yes. Difficult. I struggle to give a specific, to be honest, but okay, I've been advised to withdraw my proposal, but can I like to say something?
Well, I was going to second your proposal for approval, Chair, and just suggest that we take the reasons for refusal and turn them on their head, because I think that's the subject of all the discussion that we've just been having. And we can, this is what we've,
okay.
Whether it's as simple as that, I'm not sure, or maybe officers could advise.
We'll take that as the proposal. Right, sorry, we're getting a bit tied up here, and that's probably my fault. We'll give... We've taken a vote on that.
Yeah. Councillor Miller, just I think you're possibly about to, I appreciate you were going to originally support, but it sounded like you were about to motion, and you mentioned about, and so you'll get to that in a second, but you mentioned about turning the reason for refusal into approval. Now, I think the point, just to give some advice here, the point on physical isolation is not in doubt. We've acknowledged that within the report. Physically, it's not isolated in terms of proximity to other buildings. The issue was about sustainability because of the location. So in listening to the debate, it's one of two things. Either those who are in favour of approval are saying that it is a sustainable location, which I think is quite a difficult place to get to, given the distance to other facilities, etc., or you're saying that there are other benefits of the scheme which outweigh the fact that it's not in a sustainable location. So it's for you to decide based on, obviously, your judgment as to what you're motioning, but I think it's one of those two options.
Sorry, am I going to continue? There were other people. Come on, Chairman.
So I think we need clarification as to if you're going to move this, i.e. proposing it, as Mike has put to you, what is your reason for approval? So if you can answer his question.
That the application site is in a sustainable location under SD1 and SS6. I'm not quite sure of the subpara. Yeah.
Do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'm quite happy to second, but I would like to see some conditions put in place for things like cycle storage and EV charging points if we can.
We can suggest conditions now to include, so.
Thank you so much. We have a list of conditions here. We have approved plans, time limit, which is 3 years, materials as per the approved plans, soft and hand landscaping scheme, boundary treatment condition, biodiversity recommendations and procedures. This relates to the proposed measures in terms of biodiversity measures. And then tree protection, construction hours, limit on hours of delivery of construction materials, parking and turning for operatives, to be provided within a week of commencement. Provision of parking and turning spaces prior to occupation, and the restriction on garage use. So we're going to add cycle storage as well. Thank you.
Did we put the EV charging points in? Excellent.
We can take a vote on that now. All those in favour?
Against?
All those against? 1, 2. The motion is carried. Officers like to summarise, please.
I can confirm that the committee that the application has been approved and the reasons that we've just highlighted. The conditions are as area indicated, which are approved plans, time limit. Thank you.
We're done on that. Thank you very much. That was the last item on tonight's agenda. Thank you all for your time. Apologies for any confusion that I have caused throughout the evening, but I'll get the hang of it, I promise. Thank you for your indulging me. The meeting is closed at 8 o'clock.
I've got a long list.
Is it a long
Do you want to go through?
Yeah.
Do you want to do it now or do you want to phone up and do it?
I'm happy to do it now.